Hi, welcome to Minute with Mickey. A moment for us to wonder a bit about the story, The Queen of Sheba. You can find the story in 1 Kings chapter 10 and 11, and of course 2 Chronicles chapter 9. As always, I encourage you to go into the biblical text itself to find some of the other nuggets that are in this story, apart from just the story that was told. The first question that I have about this particular text is, what were the questions that the Queen of Sheba actually brought to Solomon? It says that she brought these hard questions and that he was able to answer them very easily. But I want to know what the questions were, because I'd like to know what she was questioning and I'd love to know the answers. Isn't it interesting that God didn't seem to find that that was an important part to put into this biblical text? It doesn't matter what her questions were. It doesn't matter what Solomon's answers were. Because what all we need to know is that what God said he was going to do for Solomon, he did. He said he was going to give Solomon wisdom beyond belief, and he did. And he also said that he was going to give Solomon wealth beyond belief. And in this text, we see this incredible wealth. So I'm wondering another thing about this wealth. First of all, the Queen of Sheba brought a bunch of it with her. It's sort of like wealth begets wealth. I mean, she had a lot and Solomon had a lot, and then she brought him a lot. And obviously, this is a good political move to make. But I think it's interesting, and I wondered, why is it that the wealth of Solomon was not shared more liberally with the people? Or maybe it was, and we just don't know that. Imagine having so much gold that you could just simply laden everything with gold, melt gold and put it on all kinds of stuff. Why not turn it into other things that you could give to other people? It must have been that during this time, was it possible that during this time the people of Israel were so well off that they didn't need it? Or is there something said here about the incredible power that wealth has to sort of keep you wanting to keep it for yourself? Is there something here? I wondered about that. The other thing I wondered about was, why is it that after Solomon had God appear to him twice, that knowing that he had that kind of relationship with God, that he would so blatantly disobey what God had said about worshiping God and God alone, as well as the fact that it was very clear from Deuteronomy 17:17 that the kings of Israel were not leaders. We were not to um, engage in marriage relationships with foreign women. And yet here's Solomon with 700 wives in order to secure his political future. I wonder if there's a sense in what's happened here is that while Solomon believed what God was doing and he saw all of this wonderful wealth and he experienced all this wonderful wisdom, that he began to trust his own self instead of trusting that this actually came from God. Then I begin to think to myself, oh my goodness, what is this saying about me? I wonder, where is it in my life that I have allowed some little part of me to go ahead of God and to do what I think is appropriate culturally or politically or socially in some regard, instead of totally trusting that God is at work in my life? What about you? Isn't it interesting? If you would go to Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 26, you'll see that Nehemiah at this point actually rebukes the nation of Israel for following in Solomon's footsteps. Imagine that of all the things that we know about Solomon and his wonder and his wisdom and the wealth that he had, when he's referred to later in Nehemiah, it's in a bad way, because Nehemiah rebukes the people for having taken wives just like Solomon and having that be the destruction of him. The other thing that I thought was very interesting was that it tells us here when Solomon died that God took away so much from the nation of Israel, but left his one son was going to have some of it, because God was always faithful to his promise, and that was that he was being faithful to the promise that he gave David originally. So therefore, there's this piece was going to be left. This one son, grandson of David, was going to be left with some of the wealth and the power. But that God was totally true to what he said. Solomon, if you disobey, this goes away. And it is interesting that Solomon really only reigned for 40 years. Think about that for a minute. We think about these kingdoms as if they have lasted forever and ever and ever. I know in my own mind, I think, wow, what a long reign. And now at this age of the game, I'm thinking to myself, 40 years? Oh my goodness. 22, I was 22 40 years ago. So that doesn't seem very long ago at all. And yet all of that happened, and that all of it was taken away. What does that say for me in my relationship with God? Where am I compromising? Where have I allowed one or two things to come in, and soon will it be 700? I think that's something that we need to wonder about for each of us. But most importantly, what is God saying to you in this story? Have a great week.